Buckabee, question mark, Buckbee, ever how you say it. And I put the question mark after because there ain't no markings on here. I don't know what this thing is. It's late 1800s banjo, but it's pretty unique, I reckon. It ain't got no kind of markings nowhere, so I've been working on this, and I just put a new piece of hide on there. I've got it cranked down pretty good. Put this Presto tailpiece on it, but I might not have to use it. I've done that to get a little bit more downward pressure with the strings. I'm going to try the original tailpiece back on it. It was like, I don't know if it's called a no knot. Pretty neat old tailpiece. I'm going to try that one back on there and see how it works. I got to make a bridge for it. And I'm going to have to do something about these lower frets. They're pretty rattly. I'm thinking about just refretting it. I'm either going to refret it or I'm going to make it a flush fret. I hadn't decided yet. But anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm leaning towards refretting it really because I have never refretted anything and I'd like to try it and see how it comes out. Many hours. I'd like to know how many hours of my life I have spent doing that, tuning a banjo. Can't never get an instrument perfectly in tune. So it keeps you always seeking that, you know. Some people get it closer than others. Keys slipping. See, no sooner than I let go of it. I got a screwdriver right here. Give it a little tighten. Might as well hit all of them a little bit. These old tuner buttons, that 5th string button came apart so easy, just brickly, you know, just crumbled so easily. It's got me a little skittish about these. I don't want to over tighten them and have them break all the pieces too. But you can always replace them. Let's see where we at. One thing I found that you can get into this circle of chasing your own tail with this tuning business, and one thing you can do to kind of speed up the process, I guess, is you can go ahead and check when you hear it, like say for instance, well, there's a lot of strings out of tune, so you trying to figure out where to start. One good place to start is with the 2 G strings. See where they at. Are they together? And I like to tune up to the note. Then you can get your D string. Of course, I'm in double C right now. You can get your D string right. We're all three of them. You'll notice, if you got a sharp ear, you'll notice when you're tuning your banjo, every time you turn one string, the other ones move. It's flexing this whole, everything on a banjo is moving parts, man. That's one reason everybody, is always going on about, well, you can tune a fish, but you can't tune a banjo, and all that stuff. I mean, it is a struggle, because, but consider yourself a noble human being to take on such a feat to play this thing. Because, look at it. You got this neck. It's not much bigger than a broom handle, and it's daggone near 3 feet long. You got these little tiny strings. They ain't even as big as a guitar string. So that's more flexible, more stretchy. All right, you got all that. And if you're brave enough to play old-timey music, and when I say old-timey, for the uninitiated here, I think most of the folks on my channel probably know the difference, but that I'm not referring to bluegrass music. About nothing against bluegrass music, but when I say old-time music, I'm talking about before bluegrass was even thought of. I'm talking about the original American music, the original American folk music, rural music played by people that was non-musically educated, and they was just figuring this stuff out. But anyhow, I'll talk more about that. I want to talk more about that. But anyway, I was talking about tuning these things. If you play an old-time music and you got an old antique banjo, well, you probably got friction tuners on it, so there throws another element to the curve. You got to deal with that. And when they move, they move. They ain't no geared ratio and barely turning stuff. You turn that sucker and it moves it. And I like that. But there ain't a whole lot of wiggle room. Anyway, so you got that feature. And if you really a purist, you probably got nylon strings on there. Well, they stretchy as crap to begin with. Well, then you got this drum head that's flexible. And, most of the old neck joints are pretty darn flexible. Most of them's just basically a wedge holding it on there. So, and then you got this rim, it's flexible, really. You could press on it and you'd hear the inflection. Especially an old this is pretty thin wood on this rim. So, let's just face it, everything about this thing moves. So when you tune one string, all of them's moving. It makes it a trick. But you can get it, but the thing about it is, you have to keep readjusting all of them. I've been notorious on some of these videos for getting lazy and just saying that's good enough for government work, as they say. But there is a truth to the fact that you will never get an instrument perfectly in tune. It's an approximation. You can get this thing in tune, and when you hit the strings open, it's pretty much perfect. And then when you start making chord shapes, some of the chord shapes will be grossly out of tune. And then you just have to find a middle ground somewhere in between. And like in C tuning, double C, one of the glaring notes that stands out is that one right there, that third. The third that's a major third, by the way. It's an E note. Now, I'm way below C, so I don't know what actual note it is. But if you were tuned in standard tuning, that would be an E note. You guys can get your tuner out and figure out where the crap I am. I think I'm somewhere down around about where my middle G string is an E or so. I'm pretty low. And it's easier on these old banjos. No truss rod. Have them tuned down, man. As a general rule, if I got an old antique banjo and it does not have a truss rod in the neck, I'm going to use nylon strings for one, and I'm going to have it tuned down, you know, a whole step at least, you know, to F instead of G, or maybe even as low as E. I usually wind up somewhere around E. Oh yeah. See what I mean there? So you have to approximate that thing. See, but it's going to be a little, it's going to be a little high when you fret it. It's just going to be a little high. And then again, you got to go back and readjust everything. Sounds pretty good. Those major thirds always give me trouble. They're one of the trickiest notes. Once you get your open strings and all that, you start coming up on them major thirds on an equal tempered instrument. They have a tendency to be sharp when they're in tune, and you have to down tune them most of the time a little bit, and just make them tolerable. So that's pretty close. This banjo, this neck's flexing a lot. I got to get this stuff tightened up and tweaked out a lot more. Everything's flexing a lot on this thing. It's hard to get it to hold a good tuning. But I'll get the bugs worked out of it. I'm still working on this thing. Yeah, I brought up a good topic a while ago, though. While I'm on this, we'll set this thing down because we can tune on that thing all morning. That's for sure. Like I said, you can get these things tightened up pretty good where they'll hold a pretty good tuning. You know, I just started working on that, and so it's going to take a little while. Get everything tightened up and stretched out. Those are new strings. Get the tuners all tightened up like they're supposed to be. Get all the bugs worked out of it. We'll find out. We'll get her there. Can't be in no hurry with this stuff. It's early in the morning, folks. I gotta have some coffee so I can get woke up. I'm always dropping stuff. Let me get a little more comfortable. Now that brings us to the topic of old-time music and bluegrass music. To the uneducated, well, I'm about to educate you, so you'll know the distinction, and you won't make that mistake. when I refer to old time music, I'm not just saying music is old timey. And to a lot of people, you know, bluegrass music, boy, that's as old time as it gets. And you know, Bill Monroe invented bluegrass music, and he was from Kentucky, so they named it after the bluegrass state, Kentucky. He named his band the Bluegrass Boys. It consisted of Strain Bean as the first banjo player, who was an old-time banjo player. And then Earl Scruggs come along, who was perfecting the art of what's now become known as bluegrass style banjo, three-finger banjo picking with two middle finger picks and a thumb pick. Well, that's bluegrass style banjo picking as a general rule. When you see somebody with middle finger picks and a plastic thumb pick or even a metal thumb pick, and you see them picking that three finger with them two fingers stuck down there like this, planted on that head, picking like that, that's Scruggs style. That's bluegrass banjo playing. He didn't invent it. He perfected it in Bill Monroe's band for that style of music, which became all these other guys, the Stanley Brothers, everybody started coming along copying Bill Monroe, and it became a whole genre of music all to its own, bluegrass music. But bluegrass is made out of much older styles of music, just much like Earl Scruggs' banjo playing. Earl Scruggs did not invent three-finger banjo playing by any means. Uncle Dave Macon played three-finger style. You can hear classical banjo players long before Uncle Dave Macon playing classical three-finger style banjo and even four-finger style banjo without picks, with nylon strings. That's one of the things that Scruggs did. Kind of became the signature of bluegrass was using the finger picks and the thumb pick, and he didn't invent that either. Snuffy Jenkins was doing that, and Earl cites that in his book about Snuffy Jenkins. But I digress. The topic of bluegrass and old time is much like the topic of, you know, Scruggs style banjo playing. The origins of it is basically Scots-Irish music, European music, and African slave music combined, and you get you know, folk music, early folk music of the United States. And when I talk about old time music, I'm referring to that type of music, pre-bluegrass even. And people come up with it after bluegrass, of course. I mean, you can write stuff today in the old time style, but I'm mainly, when you talk about old time music, you're mainly referring to, you know, playing music on banjo. It'll be played on an open back banjo, an old timey banjo, an old, could be a fretless banjo, could be a gourd banjo. You won't be using any finger picks for the most part. Now, some people come along pre-bluegrass and use some finger picks. That's where the idea came up in the bluegrass. People like Snuffy Jenkins, a lot of two-finger style banjo playing. But old time music is basically, as to keep it simple, as a general rule, usually on banjo. It's usually played on an open back banjo, but not necessarily. You can play it on a resonator banjo. We're just talking about music that's basically pre-bluegrass style. It can be written after bluegrass come along, but basically in the style of music written before bluegrass even existed. Old time folk music, usually lots of fiddle and lots of banjo, and I like to blur the lines of it a lot, but it has a whole different feel to it than bluegrass, and I've gotten more into that lately. I played bluegrass for a living professionally for years, probably the majority of my life. That's how I made a living, playing bluegrass music. And you know, when something becomes a job, it becomes a job. You still love it. but you can have a tendency to get burnt out on things. And I got somewhat burnt out on it, I guess. I'd go through spells where I'd get tired. I still love the music, but just get, I don't know, I guess it's burnt out on the scene more than the music. The scene. I got real burnt out on that. It's just, it gets a little cheesy. Nothing wrong with it, but anytime any kind of scene gets a little cheesy to me, you know what I'm saying? I like originality. I like, and that's what I like. One of the reasons I've been delving into the old time stuff a lot more lately. I just seem to be drawn to it more here lately. It's not saying later on I won't get back into a whole lot of three-finger banjo playing. I'm still doing quite a bit of it. I try to, you got to keep your practice up because you will get rusty at that stuff. But the scene, the bluegrass scene, it's great. I've made a lot of good friends there, but it's a lot of repetition going on. And one of the things I liked about old-timey music is the originality and the difference, the varied styles. Everybody played differently, and it was because it was pre-recorded music, for the most part. And now, obviously, what I've heard is recorded music, but before that, they had all that Lomax stuff and all these guys making these field recordings. The only way you had to learn a tune, for the most part, a lot of these people didn't even have like a record player. If they were lucky, somebody in the neighborhood had a radio that they could tune in and listen to WSM when that finally came along, and that was later, so these people were learning music like, they'll say something's an oral tradition, taught from mouth to ear. It's basically the same thing with this music. It was taught instrument to ear or singer to ear, and then how they could remember it's how they played the tune, if they remembered it right or if they remembered it wrong. And you wind up with all these variations of the same song. Sometimes you hear a song in one area, and over in the next town you'll have people playing it completely different, even with different words and everything, because people were just learning it the best they could and writing their own music. And I just love that. I love the way things were so varied before we had recorded music and everybody started copying each other and trying to one-up each other. And then it became a financial thing. It became a career, something people made a living at. And it became this competitive market, And to me, it really lost something when that happened. It lost something and it never got it back, And that's one of the things that I was looking for all along, even in the bluegrass music that I was playing, was kind of a nostalgia for times gone by, long before I even existed, and in a world that was not money driven, and people were living off the land for the most part. And music was a thing that people played for entertainment rather than having a TV over here, or having certainly all this internet and cell phone and information age that we live in now. It's hard to even imagine a world where most people didn't even have a radio. If you had any entertainment, you had to come up with it yourself. And that's what that type of music is all about. Personal entertainment for you and your immediate family right there at your own home. It's not a commercial thing. It was, and I feel I'm not obviously opposed to money. I mean, don't we all love money? And they like it, like you hear in the old Bible and all that stuff. Like they always say, the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, we all love having a little money. We got to admit that. Now, all of us, even people like me that claim not to use a lot of money, sometimes I say I hate money, but you won't ever see me turn down none. But you have to have it this day and time. To some extent, it's hard to live a cashless life or a moneyless life. it seems like we're going to be getting away from the cash before too long. But it seems like this day and time, you're not going to get out of it. I mean, if you have a piece of property at best and grow your own food and raise your own animals at best, and get solar power and get you a well and the whole bit, completely off grid, well, you got to pay land taxes, buddy. You're going to have to come up with some cash somewhere. Some money is going to have to change hands. Nothing is completely free in the United States. Anyhow, I guess all that rat race society, has made me long for a simpler time. For most of my life, I've been attracted to that. A time when it wasn't about money. It was, that they had to work their butt off. There ain't no doubt about that. People had to work their butt off back then. My dad, he grew up like that. My mom and dad were older when I was born, so that put me to having parents that, like my dad grew up on a farm, and they had an outhouse. They had, like he said, they had cracks in the floor so big, in the wintertime, them hogs would get under the house and trying to stay warm. Them dang hogs would stink it up under there, so they had to get them out from under it one way or the other. So what they did is they'd take old pot, put some water in there, well water, hand pumped, of course. They wasn't no electricity. They'd pump that water in the bucket, set it over on the wood stove, get that mess scalding hot and dump it down through the cracks in the floor and scald them hogs. They'd run out from under the house. I mean, that's how they lived. Everything they had, they raised. They raised their own food. They raised their own garden, their own cows, milk cows, meat cows, pigs, chickens for eggs. I had a smokehouse, the whole deal. It was all self-sufficient back then. But they worked their butt off to have that. And a lot of people nowadays think about, going off grid and romanticize the idea of living like that. But I'll tell you what, buddy, you just start out with just a little bit and see if you like it, because you're going to do some work. If you want to raise enough food to eat, you're going to have to get up every day before daylight. And you ain't going to be able to sit around and look at your phone all day. You're going to have to get out there in the yard and tend to these animals. And I just got a few little old animals. I just basically got a hobby. The animals I got by no means are nowhere near enough to sustain me. We need a lot more than that. And I want to do more self-sufficient stuff, but I also, I've got other things that I'm interested in working on, so I don't want to overwhelm myself and get too much to where all I can do is work around here in the yard all the time. And there's always stuff needs to be doing. When you got your own place and you got to look after it and you're the sole responsible person for what gets done, there is always more than enough that you need to be doing. There's always things that need fixing. You'll never get caught up, and you might as well just learn to be happy in that state of existence. You'll never be done with everything. What gets me sometimes is I start wanting to get done. And that's a fantasy. And I get too many irons in the fire. I want to work on too many things at the same time. So I have to step back and try to pace myself. But anyway, one project I want to work on in the immediate future, I got two things I want to work on pretty quick. Now, I got this shed out here. Now, I want to get this shed cleaned out good and insulate that sucker and make me a good workshop out there. So I'll have somewhere to work on stuff, because right now it's just a mess and it ain't insulated. And I hate to leave stuff out there because the humidity gets up real bad. It's a good shed. It needs finishing. It needs insulated. It needs a ceiling put up in it. And I got this thing the other day up at Jerome Tank's. I say to get around to it. Well, they had some. So I got me around to it now. So that don't mean I'm going to get around to it. Just as I got one. I'm going to try to. Some people said, don't try, do. I think that was Yoda or something. But I had this old lady I used to work for, and she used to say that. Because I'd be saying, I'm going to try to quit smoking. Well, I finally did, Miss Dorothy, so there you go. You can be proud. I don't even know if she's still living. She is something else. I'll tell you what, Miss Dorothy. Now, I appreciate her, but boy, sometimes she was hard to get along with. But she was a good woman. She helped me get a lot of work working for her, and she referred me to a lot of people. And one lesson I learned working for her about that is, like, if you working for the public, you're going to have to deal with difficult people. You're going to have to deal with people that you don't see eye to eye with, that you do not like the way they do stuff. You do not like the way they talk to people. And you don't have to be the only one that, like in that circumstance, most people that I knew could not get along with that woman. But I learned how to get along with her. And I learned to just keep my mouth shut and keep in mind the golden rule. When you got your own business, the customer is always right. Whether they right or whether they wrong. You know, you can't stand around and argue with your customers. That'll ruin your business quicker than anything. Now, some people do it and some people get by. But that never worked out for me. It just usually wound up with me quitting the job if I'm going to stand around and argue with them. So I learned how to just bite my tongue and do what she wanted me to do. And you know, she loved me and referred me to people all over the place. I got more business out of her than just about any client that I had. And she was one of the hardest ones to get along with. So it pays to learn how to bite your tongue. And the way I look at it is, you got this job you're doing for somebody that's hard to get along with. Just muscle through it. Keep your mouth shut. Try to make them happy as best you can. And go on about your business. Get it over with. That's the good thing about working for yourself. You don't have to keep working for the people that's hard to work for every day. You know, and if you choose to go do another job for them, well, that's your business. If you want to deal with it again, you can. If not, it's easy not to take another job. Heck, I can come up with 100 excuses without even sounding rude. You know, you can say, well, I just got too much on my plate right now. I have to pass on that one. You know, easy to do that. So do it ever how you want to. Like old Justin says over there. You know, that's always what everybody's going to do anyhow. So that's what you might as well do. You might as well tell everybody to do that because you know that's what they're going to do anyway. Save your breath trying to tell everybody how to do everything. Well, I've been babbling for a pretty good while now, so this coffee's starting to work on me. I think I need to go in there and see a fella about a dog. And we'll talk to y'all next time. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button and click that notification thing. That way it'll let you know when I put up a new video. I'm going to do more stuff and just sit around and talk about banjos. I got a little cooking video I want to put up. Just try to do all kinds of stuff. I'm using my YouTube kind of as a vlog. I know it's banjo-centric because I'm a banjo-centric person, I reckon. But I'm gonna try to make all kinds of videos. Anyhow, and we got this fishing video coming up. Now, I didn't get the footage. My camera wasn't on when I thought it was, but we're going to see what we can come up with. But if I don't have it, old Justin will have it over there at Spirit of the Outdoors. Y'all want to go over there and watch it because it shows me catching a big old gigantic grinnell. And I want everybody to see that. I was proud of that now. So anyhow, we'll see y'all next time. Have a good one.